Hey, it's Shannon, and today we have a new guest with us. So, when we are cultivating a life for ourselves, the life we dream of, the life that supports us, pursuing our dreams, sometimes there are things that hold us back, that are doubts or insecurities, and even past traumas that we're holding on to, and they really hold us back and can weigh us down, create barriers in our lives or limits in our lives. And in order to move on and up level into our best life and our next best life, whatever that may be, and to thrive, sometimes we need to do that inner work. And if you're tired of living with limits like I get, then you're going to love my guest, Karen Robinson. She is a trauma recovery expert, a licensed therapist with over 25 years of clinical experience, particularly in trauma recovery, anxiety, and depression. And as the CEO and transformation coach of HealThriveDream.com, she helps women heal and thrive so that they can live their next best life. Thank you, Karen, for joining me. I
Thank you
cannot
so much
wait.
for having me. Sorry, I interrupted
I
you.
That's fine. I met Karen in person in April, and I just love her spirit and her energy. And I'm so happy that she decided to join us so we can talk about stuff, so we can talk about
Stuff.
things that hold us back and how can we heal and thrive and grow and just continue to up level ourselves and live our best lives, our dream lives. So, um, you have all kinds of things out there right now. You have podcasts out there, you have coaching, you have a group program, you have articles. But there was an article that you wrote a while back, like last month or the month before this call, that I just love the title of. I think is on Medium. It's called something to the effect of "It's okay to be a mess and a therapist." That you don't have to like have it all together. In fact, that probably makes you more relatable. And then the other day, I was looking at your about page on your website, and you literally break down how I'm a hot mess and
All the
how I'm a
messes.
success. So let's talk about that to start with. I think some people get caught up that just because they're feeling the doubts and the insecurities and have all this baggage that's weighing them down, that they can't, they in their own mind they may not feel like a success. But what does that mean to you? What does it mean to be a hot mess and a success?
Yeah. I just decided to embrace it more recently because I was just so tired of all the pressure. Like, I'm
Mm,
pretty confident in my skills as a therapist, confident in, I'm not going to say I'm very confident in writing yet, but I'm confident with like hosting people in podcasts and knowing how to have a conversation. Like, okay, I can do that. But the tricky piece was all the visibility with online platforms and not knowing who's going to watch you. It was kind of stalling me out. So I would procrastinate, or like, oh, I have to have X, Y, and Z and then A, B, and C before I could do a reel. And then I just like, who cares? Like, if I feel like putting lipstick on, I will. If I feel like putting earrings on, I will. Like, who really cares? And if someone does care that much, they're not they're not meant for me to work with. Like, I work with some women that it's hard for them to get out of bed. Like, they're so
yeah,
depressed or so anxious. And sometimes I struggle with that, with my own trauma in having a family history of anxiety and depression. I have really bad days sometimes. And so I just believe in conservative and conserving energy. And you mentioned that before we started recording, that, so some days I get a lot done, and then there's other days where I don't, and just rolling with that. So that's what messy looks like, is just, yeah, I'm not doing that today.
I I'm really big about knowing. my energy limits and being able to conserve energy. And that's what we were talking about beforehand is that I knew that I needed to do my afternoon, which was going to require more energy. And so I just took a really chill morning that kind of fed into it. But I used to be, and this is probably my trauma, is like you go, 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 you do your list, you have to perform, you have to do all these things. And literally, my body started attacking itself. It, it,
Yeah.
it, and so now I know that's not a place, it's not healthy for me to be there. It's not how I want to live my life. It's not great for my kids. It's not great for my business. And it's not great for my marriage. So,
I met your husband. He's sweet. He's a sweet guy. Mhm.
he can tolerate me. He's got a certain level of patience there. But yeah, no, we're always ever growing, ever learning in my book. And but we do have these things, and we can look at somebody who thinks that they look on the outside like they have this whole package together, but we can't understand what they've been through and recognize that while we have stuff, other people have stuff too.
Yeah.
And
I
I
used
think
to be able to diagnose people just by looking in a waiting room. And my
really,
interns would just like shake their head, like, this person has OCD, this person has major depression, this person is anxious. And they're like, how do you do it? And I go, there's always tells. You look at people's nails to see
uh-huh,
how short they are. You look how people are dressed, like OCD people have coordinating outfits and perfecto makeup or they won't leave their house. And this isn't complete stereotypes. There's definitely OCD people who are also really messy looking. But it's as a general framework, and people with depression, sometimes they haven't washed their hair because they just didn't have energy to do that. Or their buttons are that's usually me. Their buttons are wrong on their shirt or something,
or they have a
or they just
multitude of kids and they just weren't paying attention.
yes, there's always exceptions or other rules on why we look the way we look. But even seasons of my life, like there's times where I put more time and energy and effort. Like I worked with a coach once who said people shouldn't even do a podcast or be on unless they have their hair done and makeup done and earrings on and all that. And I'm like, well, if that's the case, I'm going to have to really slow down on my podcast recording because if I don't want to put earrings on, if I'm not feeling that energy where I want to do it, I just don't want to do that anymore. After 50, it's like, no. And I tell my guests, this is where my energy's at. What do you want? Do you want to reschedule? Like if it's really, but usually just showing up, when I show up, I start to feel better, get the energy through them and so forth. But I just hate faking like, oh, I'm so happy today. No. If I'm having
Yeah,
a rough
okay.
day, I have to just disclose that and like, okay, this is a hard day for me. Like especially when my mom passed away and stuff, and I think I'm okay now, but I want you to know like if I start not feeling good, I will be happy to reschedule and just call it that. So just accepting yourself as you are is huge. Like I know you have to show up a certain way for your business, but I think it's best if you can try to do that in an authentic way and not be fake, not fake it. Just doesn't feel good for anybody.
Yeah, and I think it serves people better if we're just who we are and then allows
Yeah.
them to be who they are, and accepting them where they're at, you know. But that's my bias there.
Mhm.
Anyway, so let's talk about doing the work. Let's talk a little bit about the fact that we can heal, we can work through the stuff that we're working through. Um, so what I love the name of your business, Heal, Thrive, Dream. What does that mean for you? Why did you choose that and what does that mean for you?
Yeah. Well, I think God chose it, but what I've done with it, He doesn't give me every instruction, unfortunately. But heal is the piece where a lot of us have dysfunctional childhoods, or a lot of hard things have happened in childhood. And some of it people kind of minimize. Like, a lot of times people minimize bullying, but bullying is one of the reasons that teenagers complete suicide. So it's not a little thing. So healing is, all the stuff that happened during your childhood or younger days. It could be a prior relationship that was very wounding to you. So healing all those pieces, but we do it in bite-sized chunks, so it's not overwhelming. The thriving piece is focusing on the relationships you want in your life, how to keep them. So if you have a partner that's healthy, how do you, what's your role in that? And how do you nurture, not nourish? It's like that word
Oh,
doesn't sound right. But I'm
it
not
was
saying feed your
working for
man. I'm
me.
not doing that.
So
My husband feeds me or we all starve. So how do you nurture the relationships you have now? That's where the thriving parts in. So, how do you thrive as a parent, as a partner, as a friend, as a coworker, as an extended family member to people you want in your life? What does thriving look like? And so we do that in bite-sized chunks too. So in April, you may focus on, okay, I want my relationship to be healthier. But in June, my brother and I are in conflict. Like, what could I do to improve that relationship? Or do I accept that there needs to be a break or a cutoff? So we talk about cutoffs, and are they temporary? Are they permanent? What feels good? What can we do that we don't have regrets? Because we can't control what other
mm,
people do, right? And then the dreaming part is multifaceted in my opinion. So dreams can be a lot of different things. I can maybe reference it with my own dreams. My own dream is to have, a membership for women where they can feel safe. They can talk about their healing journey. They can work on all the pieces of themselves. They can show up messy, because most of the women in my membership are professional women. Some of them are more successful than others because, once you get out of school, like, you're not immediately successful. So the dream piece is, it can be about your career or becoming an entrepreneur. So you're not in a toxic work situation anymore. If you are, it could be like what your mission in life is. What is your purpose, your passion? And also, like, how could you be more charitable? So we haven't worked on this yet in my membership, but one of my goals is to teach the women how, even though they may not feel like they're very far in their journey, they're 1 to 2 to 3 steps further ahead than women who are really suffering right now. And so what could we do as a collective or independently to support women that are hurting? A lot of the women in my membership are on scholarship, and thank you for being a sponsor. That's awesome. And so the women that need scholarships, they still need to see that they can make a difference, and maybe when they get their paycheck, they can think about, okay, do I want to do something with my money to help someone else, or do I want to use my time to help someone else? Or is it something behind the scenes? But there's always something to do to make a difference in our communities. And I consider the world, the globe, one family, one world, kind of. I know not everybody agrees with that, but that's my personal belief, is we're one family, one world. And so who can we help and where can we help them? That's hugely healing. So it's like a circle.
it
When you're
is.
dreaming, you're healing. When you're thriving, you're dreaming. So all three words kind of play on each other. So I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I took a couple notes because I come up with this list of things where you and I align, and there you triggered some more. But oh, gosh, there was so much in that was so awesome. Your membership is called This Is Us Healing Trauma Together as a community, and yet there's an opportunity to make a difference in the world by sponsoring somebody into your membership, um, and allowing giving somebody the gift of community and healing within your community, um, which I think is important. We're not always in a space where can financially take that on, but we're ready for that kind of support. And I feel that it's really important to have a support system, and it's really important to know that you're not alone in your journey, whatever that journey happens to be. Um, it's not a great place to be when you feel like you're by yourself, or that nobody understands, or that, and it's really beneficial from my perspective to be able to realize that I'm not the only one that has felt like that, or that somebody else has got it way worse than I do.
Mhm.
And I need to be a blessing to them, not be sucked down into, whatever I'm dealing with, which for me is often a depression um, issue. Sometimes we choose to do hard stuff. Sometimes hard stuff happens in our life, and sometimes somebody does really crappy stuff to us that we then
Mhm.
have to deal with. Um, and I'm sure there's more as a therapist, you know way more about all of this than I do, but that's mentally how I break it down as I look at, you know, what's important in my household
Mhm.
and in my community. Um, and recognizing that there can be trauma bound up in any one of those three. And as a culture, well, we have multiple cultures but we've all gone through the pandemic now, and it creates a kind of a global kind of history, but it's very individual. And for some, it highlighted some very hard things in different ways. And and then there's things that happened before. In our family, we've been through two natural disasters in the matter of 3 years. And that has created some various trauma that I have to be aware of and manage and support, and you know offer therapy to those who wanted it. And it's one of those things that being aware that hard stuff sometimes is what's causing us to weigh down, and being able to go into a community where we feel heard and seen and not alone is very empowering. But it
Yeah.
can be scary. It's very scary to go and try something new. How do you
Yeah.
ease people in and to your community to let them know that they feel safe and heard?
It's such a beautiful question. Yeah, I'm very sensitive to that because it's a sensitive topic, the trauma. And we do have one. Well, we have a few actually, we have several entrepreneurs in my membership, and so being visible around or claiming to be a trauma survivor was even very challenging. So what I usually suggest is I try to give them a heads up on what to expect during the coaching session. So I explain the layout. I explain that the first 15-20 minutes, I present on the theme of the month and some tips and techniques that they can try. And it's recorded. And because it's recorded, I say you have the option of turning off your video if you would like not to be part of the recording. So I give them a heads up before I record for the people that can't be there. And then after I do the coaching, the video goes off, and then we have a peer support group that is not recorded. So if you're unable to attend that session, you don't get a replay. But that's how it creates safety in the group. The next thing I do is I always go first to model. And so one of the things that we do is we don't claim our trauma, claim any shame, but we we take responsibility for our healing. So in order to do that and move past shame, move past secrets, move past guilt or any crappiness that comes up, I encourage women to think of it as AA. Like, hi, my name is Karen. I'm a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse. I had two sexual assaults. I had a relationship with domestic violence. I survived a natural disaster, like I'm just giving examples. I haven't gone through all of these things, a lot of them, but not all of these things. But when I do it in the group, I say exactly what my traumas were. I say one of my other traumas was I had 22 EEO complaints when I worked for the Department of Defense. And that was really pretty traumatizing, all that harassment. And so I go first and then I invite people to go. If it's somebody new and I've already prepped them and they have social anxiety and they want to go, I get them in first. They go next. If they if they want to pass, so I encourage people to just pass the first couple of times. Like, it's okay. Like, you have your whole life, or as long as you want to be in this group to share whatever. And so they have the permission to pass, and the people that have been there for a bit, they'll do theirs, and we can circle back, and they don't have to say anything about themselves, and they can just listen to the other woman share and get support. Sometimes they talk about the theme and how, what their takeaways were and what it meant for them. What's been fascinating to me to watch, it's not surprising, I guess, because I've been, doing this for a while, is that even things you don't think of in terms of them having in common, they do. Like, they told, one member brought up, we were talking about avoidance. That was the topic of the day, avoidance. And so one member brought up, she goes, I avoid because if I know I can't do that perfectly, I don't want to take that
Mhm.
risk and be seen. And
Mhm.
all the other women like, oh my God, that's me too. And
Yeah,
they were so surprised that other women in the group could resonate that. It was just very, very validating. Like some things, like it's common that survivors struggle with self-worth, especially at the beginning of treatment. That's kind of common. A lot of the women have struggled with that. It's common that women struggle with addictive behavior, whether that's alcohol, emotional eating, overspending. It's common. So, they can but sometimes there's just something we haven't thought about, and they'll be like, oh my God. And I'm like, it all goes back to trauma. It all does, not wanting to be seen, because if you were seen as a child and if there was domestic violence or a threatening parental figure, it was to like you learned to shut up really quick. You learned that your voice, you should just shut it down. So that's why a lot of
it's not
times,
safe.
yeah, we get this tightness in our throat, or we'll get a headache, or our stomach are the three core areas in our body that we will carry that wound. And so that's why there's so much IBS and migraines and immune system issues with trauma survivors.
Makes total sense. I think we were talking before we started recording about how my body will attack itself if it gets to a certain level or experiences certain things as part of my response. Then, and at this point, that's not a good thing. Um, and
No,
yeah, but part of me doing inner work, and for me, it feels like a continual process of doing inner work. Um,
it
for
is.
me, it's just a continual process, and um, part of me doing my inner work is being able to recognize that it's there and take ownership of it, and then decide what I'm going to do with it. Um, and that's just me talking. You know, where for you, where do you like to have your people start with doing their inner work? If somebody is not ready for your community, he isn't quite ready for one-on-one coaching, has some baggage around therapy, where do they start? Because there's a lot of healing that you can do as
Yeah.
on your own. So
Hmm.
where do you start? Where do you start?
Yeah. So one of the things is I would want to know a little bit more about them if I was to guide them on what they were going to do and not have therapy or coaching. For example, do they have a learning disability or not? Because
Mm,
that will matter on what I
that
recommend
matters.
for interventions. Same with energy. So the library is like the perfect place if you're not ready for therapy and you have no money. You know, contact me. I'll give you some things to read. you know, so that's the reading is huge, but there's a lot of
Oh
junk out
yeah.
there too. So you just consult with well, on my website I have some books, but I need to keep updating that. But looking at the reading list of different trauma related websites, like the Trauma Research Foundation, they have a book club every quarter. And what they do is they have a panel, and I've been on the panel several times now, where we discuss the book, we take questions, and then the last session, the author is invited to come on, and we get to ask the author questions, and that's pretty fun. But anybody can participate, and you don't have to be on screen. Like you don't have to be part of the panel. Like you can just be part of the YouTube audience and put your questions in the chat, or not. You can just watch. So that's another thing. Those books tend to be really healing. And the first book every year that we do is um, The Body Keeps the Score, the basic trauma recovery book. And it's a great, great read. If you haven't read it yet, The Body Keeps the Score. So it's a strong recommendation. And if you don't like to read, well, first of all, doing a combination of all these things is wonderful therapy. But if you don't like to read and maybe you like to write, getting in the habit of journaling, just all your thoughts, your feelings, your mood, your behavior, anything bothering you, just dump it out on paper, and just get in the habit of doing that. It's like your journal is your therapist, because sometimes we just need a vessel that will hear us.
Yeah, well,
And the journal
journaling
can
is
hear us.
huge for me. Journaling is huge for me. It's so huge for me. But you have a few guided journals as well available
Hmm.
as well that are on Amazon. I can put the link to those below. Um, do you have one that is like your go-to? Like you have it like the Thriving Woman's 12-week journal, something along those lines. Is that like
Yeah,
a
I
good
like that one a
starting
lot.
point?
I like the
Or gratitude,
affirmation one too. Yeah.
the affirmation one. You have a
Hmm.
gratitude journal as well that gratitude practice for me has been really, really important. Like when I get into a difficult space headspace, and I recognize I'm in a difficult headspace, um, I do a very intentional exercise of I call it 3+1. So if every day I need to find at least three things that I am grateful for, thankful for. And honestly, sometimes it's I got up. I've been in those spaces. I have food. I mean, sometimes it's like the sun is shining, it can be that basic sometimes. And
Hmm.
then the plus one is to do something for somebody else. And and that is even if it's smiling or holding a door or saying, I love that color on you, or something to take my eyes off of myself and that headspace that I am stuck in. Um, so I love the idea of like a gratitude journal as a guided way to log those things because honestly, just from my own personal experience, sometimes we have to search really hard to find what we're grateful for if we're in those really hard spaces. And
Yeah.
and having something guiding to ask those questions is or a place to log it, go back and at look how far I've come. Like, out of this zone. I don't know. That's just been my technique. I picked it up somewhere along the line. Um,
Yeah, in my membership, actually, we give journaling prompts every month to help with that. And it's usually around a theme to help people. There's a beautiful book too called A Thousand Gifts of Imperfection. It's about keeping a gratitude journal practice. And the rule is once you list something, you can't list it again. So I was
hmm,
doing 3 a day to get to the 1,000. I did it over a year's time. And so if you have your children, you can only list them once. So, but I have to say, with that book, it you had to dig deep to find gratitudes after a certain number, but there was always, always, always something. And I've done this book with a few clients, and we all feel it's life changing. So to
mhm.
really dig for the gratitude, because if you don't feel grateful living in your house, if you're in America, you know, look online somebody living in a devastated area and doesn't have water. Can you imagine not having water? Like, and then
You
if
know,
you have water, is it hot? Can you take a hot shower? I've
oh,
been to places where there's no hot water.
or running water. There are
Yeah.
places
Can you
where you're
imagine lugging
still
your water?
hauling water. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So just
Uh,
there, we can be grateful for hot showers. We can be grateful for clean drinking water. We can be grateful that we don't have to go march 2, 3 miles to get our water. Like, yeah, just water.
you
Huge.
know, after the flood, we call them flood 1.0 and flood 2.0, where our house flooded to 3 and 4 feet. Um, Everything was a mess. Basically our entire property ended up being a river. Um, and afterwards, like there'd be things like we were living in very primitive US uh situations, and I grew up camping, backpacking, so that's okay. But I would say first world problem, you know, because I have traveled a great deal. When I was younger, I traveled a great deal, and really, even in the conditions we were living, it was a lot better than what people live in day to day in other areas. And I had to keep that perspective. This is a first world problem. It's
Well, I
uncomfortable,
hope, yeah, I
but
hope you don't
it's
minimize though losing a lot of your belongings and stuff is not easy either. Yeah.
no, it isn't. It isn't. But at the same time, it's finding that gratitude and that perspective that this is temporary. We can get through this and moving on. But that's being able to have that context of and perspective. I'm a big believer in letting kids travel, teens and young adults travel, that there's a lot of benefit to seeing how the rest of the world functions.
Yeah. I wanted
Or
to go back
even,
to the healing. Go
mhm.
ahead.
No, go
I
ahead.
wanted to go back to the healing practices for people who aren't ready.
Hmm.
I did a deep dive into grief work too. And one of the techniques that it also works for trauma is art, doing artistic, creative things as a way to heal. Helps you to be more mindful, to be in the moment, which takes a break from regrets or pain from the past. And it also takes a break about being worried about your future, being anxious about that. So just being in the moment. So clay, sand, just playing in general or creating can be very therapeutic.
Yeah, yeah, I've seen that. There's an entire specialty about art assisted therapy. Um, but yeah, being able to have that. The other thing that is spending time with animals has been something that's been very therapeutic. And obviously, we have horses, so equine assisted. We have some experience with equine assisted therapies and how beautiful that can be for people who have had trauma in their lives, to spend time with this just very accepting, mirroring entity, and outdoors. Outdoors is my
Nature.
thing, being in nature.
Yeah.
Yeah. But each thing speaks, we don't all have access to the same stuff, and certain things speak to our hearts more than other things. So,
Yeah.
um, you know, I think there is so much value in belief and hope, and the fact that you can know that this you're feeling your limits. You're feeling like you're hitting a wall. You're feeling weight, and knowing there is a way forward. There is a way to work through it, that we don't have to hold it and carry it and have it be this weight within us or baggage on us. Um, and I think you've got all kinds of resources out there that are both free and paid. That what is one of those things that, or what is a tip for someone who is feeling that weight, feeling the hard stuff, feeling held back, in whatever they're trying to do. They want to move forward, they want to go to the next level for them, whatever that may look like. How can they tap into that hope and knowledge that there's healing available for them?
Yeah. Really important question. So I think one of the best answers I can give is, so working with trauma, we focus on what is the body feeling. That's the somatic work. When I work with people with anxiety and depression, which also happens to be a lot of people with trauma as well, I focus more on the brain work, the beliefs that you were discussing earlier, as a great way to start because it's very concrete work. Our body's kind of tricky. Things shift on us pretty quickly. The number one thing to know about your thoughts and your beliefs is that they can change, and they have changed over time. So just because you believe something today doesn't mean you have to believe it tomorrow. And I can teach ways on how to shift that. And there's, again, lots of resources for that. So I call it stinking thinking when you have a negative belief about yourself. Well, I didn't come up with that term, by the way, that was already out there. But I know how to shift it to healthier thoughts now. The key is your healthier belief has to be believable. You don't have to believe it today, it has to be believable. So if you were struggling, let's say you're a student and you're getting bad grades in your math courses, and you have the belief like, well, I'm a failure at math. I suck at it. If I said to you, no, you're an Einstein, you should believe that. Like it's just not gonna fly, right? And so what I help people with is, do you believe that you're capable of learning? And they're like, well, what do you mean? I go, well, research shows even people with a lot of disabilities, cognitive disabilities, even our um, cognitively impaired population, it's proven that they are capable of learning. They can always learn new things. And
Yeah, we're
so, do you
learning.
think that you can learn new things? And they're like, well, yeah. I'm like, okay, so what's healthier to believe? I'm stupid or I'm capable of learning? Okay. Because you create what you believe. So if you walk around believing you're stupid, you're going to not try as hard. Why study if you're stupid? Why put effort? Why do your notes? Why write a report? Because you'll just set yourself up for more failure. If you believe that you're capable of learning and that whatever you put your mind to can expand and exceed, that's more hopeful. That's going to help drive your action, and the same is true if you think you're a bad parent. Well, one, what does that even mean? Because there's no perfect parent. So, what is more helpful to believe? I'm a bad parent or I'm a good enough parent? Or I'm a parent that's improving every day. That's kind of one I use, right?
I love that one.
You know, and yeah. And if you went to court, one of the things I teach is called objective analysis. Like if you took your belief to court, is the judge going to take your child away? Well, if you're throwing them down the stairs and beating them up, yes. And it's okay to believe in that moment, yeah, I really need to work on my parenting, right? But if you're doing your best, like you're feeding your child, you're giving them love, you're doing your best with some stumbling, the judge is gonna be like, get out of here, get out of my court. You're wasting my time. He's not gonna take your kids away. So just remembering, like asking yourself, is this belief really, really true? Or am I just thinking in that way today? So if you don't consistently believe it every day, it's probably a false belief. If if the belief is not useful to you, which is another analysis I teach in CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is the belief, like I ask quite people, does this belief help you feel better? Oh no. Does this belief help you thrive in your relationships, or is it harming your relationships? And then the last question is, does this belief help you achieve your goals? And if you're saying no to most of those, then why keep thinking in that way? Why not substitute with a healthier thought? And I help people come up with healthier thoughts. And then it doesn't stop there. Like, I know if I run every day, if I think about running every day, like I know if I were to run every day, I could probably do a marathon, but I need to do more than think about it, right? And so with the affirmations or the countering your unhealthy thoughts, you have to practice them. And so I get people to come up with a schedule, first thing in the morning before they go to bed, sometime at noon, how to ground yourself to do your beliefs, holding your cards like that tactile, seeing your cards, and then hearing your voice. And when you do your affirmations, you want to stand up, you want to be confident because it's rehearsal.
Mhm.
Yeah, you're rehearsing right now. It doesn't mean you believe that you're capable of something right now, you know? And so I've personally tried these techniques, so I know they work, and I've had a few thousands of clients now at this point after 25 years that have practiced this, and it works. It's just people practicing it and believing that they can change.
Right. And you probably don't know this, but I work with a nonprofit that does a lot with brain science and behavior. And
Yeah.
there is
Cool.
neuroscience behind how memories are formed that speaks to why that works. And it's really amazing. Our bodies are just absolutely amazing. How our
They
brains
are.
work is amazing. But oh my gosh, you brought up, I know I need to wrap this up, but you brought up this learning example and learning differences, which is all in my wheelhouse. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I need like scribbling. um, there's that was just all wonderful. And there is this there was a quote as I was growing as a parent and recalibrating my parenting as I was growing as a parent. Um, there was a quote that I can't even tell you who it was from now, but it was along the lines of you make your best choice right now. And then when you know more, you take a better choice. And then when you know more, you make a better choice. And giving yourself permission to grow, to to know that yes, maybe I didn't make the smartest choice right there. Maybe that was a downright not great choice, but I can make a better choice and I can make another better choice. And as I learn and grow, I can grow as an individual. I can grow as a parent. I can grow as whatever I want to grow as. That's that was very empowering um, thing
Right.
that we're not trapped where we're at. If we're not happy with where we're at, we're not trapped there. That there's a way forward. Um, and individuals like you who provide all these different ways to help facilitate moving us forward are just very special. It's not easy work, and I appreciate that you have created these safe zones and climate to allow others to grow.
That's very kind of you
You.
to
Do you
say.
have any last words before we wrap up here that you'd like to leave anybody with?
I think there's one more thing I would love to add to the healing wheel because it's so important. And that's practicing pieces of mindfulness and meditation. It's a game changer. If you can get out of your head and just be. And when you're in your head, just like, okay, I'm in my head. Let me try getting out of it again. And just start. Like, I have a hardest time with meditation. So it's weird for me to recommend it, but I have read extensively and I've tried lots of different types. I've seen it work wonders for my clients. And so I just keep trying. The more trauma that we've been through, or the more brain injury, or, um, different symptoms, like if you struggle with attention deficit, there's challenges in trying to meditate. But the truth is, if you have challenges, you need it more, not less. Okay. And you are capable of doing it. Just start at 5 minutes.
I also have trouble with meditation, but I really enjoy being present outdoors, out in nature, being present and mindful and mm, not having to, like putting the to-do list aside and the have-tos aside and just being present and having
Well,
animals aside.
mindfulness is part of meditation. So you're actually meditating. Like prayer is part of meditation. Getting silent and focused is very meditative. So if it's hard, it's okay to try it differently. It's okay to just go for a walk on a path and just focus on what you're seeing, what you smell, what you can touch. That's meditative.
See, and I feel that just as you're talking, you bring those senses in and it's like it puts me in a space.
Hmm.
I love that. That's very cool. Thank you so very much, Karen, for joining me today. I have a whole list of things I would love to talk to you about. So
We'll have to
hopefully
do it again
we'll
and
do it
again.
again. If you would like to connect with Karen, she is at healthrivedream.com. Her community is called This Is Us, Healing Trauma Together. And I will put the links and so forth in the show notes. Thank you again, Karen.
Thank you too, Shannon.